All right, so I want to welcome everyone to this month's masterclass. If this is your first masterclass, if you're new to the masterclass format at New Work Revolution, we do a masterclass every single month, and the topics vary. Sometimes we talk about people management, sometimes we talk about planning, sometimes we talk a little bit about marketing. That's not necessarily our big area of expertise. But we talk about things that are relevant to leaders, particularly small business leaders, and how to help them have the tools to really create value for the people that they serve. And so we do a free masterclass just to give you a taste for what we do, how we think, how we approach situations with organizations that we work with. And so lead with confidence is the topic for this particular month. And this is really just born out of the fact that there are situations that are happening right now with clients that I'm seeing in the marketplace where people, I think, are feeling a little bit uncertain. So, whether you're really excited about the new presidency or whether you think that it's the worst thing ever, or if you're somewhere in between like me where you're just like, hey, I don't know if I trust any of these guys, then you've noticed that people are a little unsure about what the future holds. And I think when that happens, people tend to pull back a little bit. People tend to stop engaging in certain products and services that they normally do. And as a leader, that's an opportunity for us to really figure out how do we stay connected to our clientele and the people that we serve so that we can continue to provide value to those people. And as a leader, especially a small business leader, there's plenty in our business that at times makes us feel like maybe we're ill-equipped, maybe we're not qualified to really do. And so I want to give you a few things that you can do in the near future immediately to thrive during uncertain times. Now, I started my business in 2008, and I'll get more into that here in a minute, but I certainly understand how to navigate uncertain times. So we'll kind of go through a little bit of that. So the key truth I want to present to you right off the bat is uncertainty is a catalyst for transformation. Here's the thing about scarcity mindset. You hear a lot about scarcity and having a scarcity mindset. And I think probably if you're like me, most of the time when you hear someone talk about a scarcity mindset, that's not necessarily a good thing, right? It's like, oh, I got to get out of scarcity, or I'm behaving out of scarcity. But here's another thing about scarcity that a lot of people don't appreciate or they don't realize. Short-term periods of scarcity thinking can create and be a catalyst for doing something that you didn't think was possible, for creating a shift, for creating a catalyzing event that you didn't see or didn't know possible, that having some constraints in your life, whether that be time, finances, people, having those constraints forced you to find a different way to do this. And I'll give you an example of this. Right after COVID, I had a client that, like a lot of service-based businesses that were closed down for a period of time, they panicked and they laid off pretty much all their workforce. Well, that closing of the businesses didn't last all that long. I think it was a lot shorter than most people were thinking it was going to be, myself included. And then when they reopened a couple of weeks later in a lot of places, they were like, oh my God, what do we do? Now I need to bring all these people back. Well, of course, people didn't come back. Not everyone came back to work. Some people said, you know what, maybe I've been thinking about staying home or doing something different. And they went ahead and did that. And I remember my client calling me in a panic and just freaking out about what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And I remember, asking this question as a coach. I want to ask a question in the face of that uncertainty. And I said, hey, what could you do differently in the way that you deliver your service that would allow for you to do it at a high level with the people that you have? And on the surface, of course, this leader's like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. That's why I'm asking you. And I said, listen, I want you to think about what you can do differently. I want you to take some time and think about that. I don't have the answer for you and what that is, but I think if you think about it enough, you'll come up with something that works. And short answer, they did. They came up with a different way to deliver their service with the people that they had that allowed them to do their service at a high level, but also do it with the constraints that they had with personnel. And so when we have these areas of uncertainty, it does create a scarcity mindset. But a lot of times for people, scarcity causes us to really focus. Now, the downside of scarcity, and I'll admit that there is one, is that if you stay in that place too long, that can really burn you out. That kind of stress isn't necessarily good long term. But if you can channel that in a short period of time, having constraints can really be a way to force us to do something different, to create something that the current situation and conditions are forcing us to create. And the second part about this is pattern interrupts can be good. You know, when COVID happened, as an example, I decided, hey, I had an office downtown and I was, paying for this office. And it just so happened our lease was up later in that year of 2020 and I didn't renew it. I had been talking to the building about renewing my lease and I didn't. I got an office that was closer to my house and cut down my commute time tremendously. Now, the office wasn't as nice, it wasn't as fancy, but it allowed me to kind of change some things that I'd been meaning to change, that I'd been meaning to do differently, that, an uncertain situation kind of forced me to reevaluate all the different things that I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and make those changes. So if you find yourself in that position, the first thing I want to say about that is I'm sorry that you're in that position. Uncertainty can be really difficult, but at the same time, this is an opportunity for you to use it as a benefit and a plus if you lean into that. And so, as I mentioned, the current economic climate has created some fear and uncertainty with the public. Some of my clients are feeling the effects of this. Well, I have clients that do elective type services, things like that. They're feeling that a little bit right now. So they're trying to regroup and figure out what to do differently. And let's be honest, number two, there are likely things that needed to change that you've been resisting or avoiding. There's probably some things that you can think of right now that need to change, but you're avoiding it and you're resisting it. And look, we're all that way when it comes to change at various levels. Change is difficult, but this is an opportunity to do that. And some of the most profitable endeavors, some of the most transformational things that I've seen happen for my clients as well as other businesses happen in times of uncertainty. There's something about uncertain times that really bring out the best in people where they're really creating and in a space to create some really amazing things. There's just something about, again, being constrained that really brings our creative thinking out in us. So as I mentioned, my name is Brandon Allen. I run a company called New Work Revolution. Now, I called it New Work Revolution because I have this crazy notion that people should enjoy the work environments that they work in, not just employees, but also the owners and also the leaders. And so I spent 10 years in finance. So in banking and finance, we went through some weird things, the dot-com bubble. I remember that. I was working in banking and finance when that happened around the 2000s. So that was kind of an uncertain time. Because I worked in finance, interest rates fluctuate over time. So you'll have periods where interest rates are high, times where interest rates are low. So you always have to navigate things like that. And then I went through a time where I started my business in 2008. And honestly, in hindsight, 2008 probably wouldn't be the year, if I were to go back and do it again, that I would pick to start a business, because there was a lot of uncertainty going on in that year. But that was kind of what I ended up doing, and had to learn how to navigate the uncertainty of economic turmoil that happened with the real estate crisis. And so we have these periods of time, some more severe than others, that we have to navigate some uncertainty. And so how do we lead with confidence? How do we do the things that we can do? Because there's things as a leader, and this is what I teach clients, is There's things that you can control, and we want to focus our time there. There are things that we can't control. Whether or not a client comes in the door, whether or not a customer agrees to buy something, whether or not a president makes a policy or doesn't make a policy. We have no control over those things. Now, there's times where we can have influence over those things, but we have no control. So I've got to accept the fact that I can't control those things. But as a leader, I want to make sure that I am focused on the things that I know that I have control over. That is the sweet spot in leadership. And it's really about identifying what those things are. And so as we talk about the masterclass, I want to share with you this frictionless leadership model. This is kind of the model that I'm using this year with clients. And it's really built on the idea of removing unnecessary friction from the workings of their business to create simplicity, but also to create opportunities for growth. So in March, I did a workshop on habits around frictionless leadership, because I think habits are the thing that really drive a lot of the other things. When we talk about vision, your habit and how you approach thinking about the big picture and being strategic is going to influence that. When you have good habits around your finances, right, that's important. Systems and planning, team, all that kind of stuff is influenced by habits. And so today we're going to spend some time really thinking about systems and planning and team and how that works in your business and what you can do differently to maybe create some different outcomes for yourself in this situation. And so the first pillar of the three that I'm going to talk about today is doubling down on your experience. And so at New Work Revolution, one of the things that we've talked a lot about. So if you go to newworkrevolution.com, we have a free resources page. We have a book called Total Experience Design. And in Total Experience Design, the idea here is this: the way to overcome commoditization. Because when we get into times where the economy might be a little tight or people are maybe holding back on things, what we tend to do is we want to lower prices, or we want to make things cheaper for people to, get access to us. And the problem is you're never going to be cheap enough to really compete on price. And if you're a small business, it's really almost impossible to compete on price. Not saying that you can never do it, but it's pretty difficult because you just don't have the economies of scale that a larger business has. And so the way I can overcome that is I'm going to double down on the experience that I create. I want to get really clear on really the foundation of what we do as an organization, right? I want to highlight the value that we give in our existing experience, but also look at ways that we can enhance and improve that for our client base. And so here's a question that I have for you to think about. And hopefully you've got a pen and paper or, some way to take notes here. But what is the essence of what you have to offer? And what can be enhanced? What is the essence of what you have to offer? And I'm going to get into trimming the fat here in a little bit, but I really want you to think about this. Like, what is the essence of my business? What is it that I do, and how can I enhance that at another level? What's the next step that I can take in this process, right? So, think about the core strengths, the success that you've had, and where do you see patterns? Where do you see opportunities to really raise the bar with what you're doing? Where have you consistently delivered exceptional results to, the people that you serve and the people that you've worked with? All these things are so important to consider when you're thinking about your service offering, because the reason why we talk about experience and why we camp on that is that experience is one of those things that people will pay more for, that it's been determined and decided and studied that when the experience is high level, people will pay more for that. So you have a uniqueness. You have something that you do that is unique. What is that, and how can you double down on that? And then think about this. What are the things that you've been doing that, that you are what are the things that you're doing that you've been sitting on, right? What are the unrealized opportunities that you can bring to the market? Now, if you're like me, you probably have a lot of ideas that, some of those are really good ideas, but you just really haven't done anything with those things. What are the unrealized opportunities in your business that you have not brought to the market, at this point, right? And so one of the case studies that I want to talk about with regards to this is something that I've had a couple of clients do some different things during uncertain times. And so recently I had a courier company that I work with in Canada who merged with another company. They connected with a company. One of the things we'd been talking about is networking and getting out and meeting people. Well, they met a company that had a pretty complementary business, but had some similar infrastructures that they did. Well, in talking with this other company, they determined that it really made sense to really strategically merge, to put together a package for how they could merge their companies together to work together. Now, when I talk about unrealized opportunities, here's the interesting thing about uncertain times. Most people sell in uncertain times, but the smartest people, they buy. Steve Jobs from Apple was a big fan of this. He always was looking to be an active buyer of other businesses when things got a little tough. He knew that cash flow was going to be tight and that there were opportunities to buy. This client of mine in Canada saw some opportunities to merge and partner with a business that was going to bring enhanced value to their business in new and different ways. So they decided to merge. They just closed on this merger a couple of months ago. Very exciting. And then I had a client in COVID times where, again, their office was shut down for a period of time. They were a service-based company. A lot of the companies that I work with are service-based. And now they were faced with, okay, like this has radically changed the way that things work, because some of their clientele didn't come back when they opened up. They were a medical office. Their patients, their clients did not come back at the same level that they were coming before. Now, this particular client had been talking forever about adding certain services to their office that required different levels of skilled labor, that required different levels of training. And they thought, while we're a little slower right now, I'm going to take advantage of that and bring that into our business. And they were successfully able to launch that in 6 months, a completely different arm of services in their business, brought a completely different clientele to them, had, employees on their team with different levels of expertise, and were able to significantly start growing their business as a result of this opportunity that they were able to realize that they'd been sitting on when they were really busy, right? And so that's, when it comes to doubling down on the offering, the service that you have, there's probably a lot of ways that if you took some time and thought about it, you could see that would help to enhance the offerings that you have. Now, the second thing has to deal with efficiency, trimming the fat, right? Focusing on productive, profitable offerings. Now, one of the things that I've noticed in times of uncertainty or things like that is, there's a lot of things that I do that I realize later I don't really need to do. They don't really enhance the value of what I'm doing. And so with regards to friction, what is holding you back that removing it would allow you to grow more quickly, right? What are the things right now that's happening in your business that if you remove those things, they would allow you to grow more quickly? Now, I had an office that I've been coaching that they had a specific employee that they were just really not happy with. And they kept talking about him on call after call. And I finally just said, hey, what is the value of keeping this particular employee if every time we have a conversation, you have a lot of negative things to say about them? Well, they said, well, we would get rid of them, but it takes so long to train them that we don't want to turn them over. It takes a year and a half, they said, to train a new employee. Now, right away, I was like, look, if it takes a year and a half to train a new employee, that's too long. That's never going to work. That's not a sustainable model. So we went through the process of trimming the fat in their systems, their processes, and really help them to get clear on this. Because here's the reality of kind of where you're at and what you're doing here. 20% of the value, 20% of your offerings probably generate 80% of the revenue in your business, right? So, trimming the fat is so important. But by addressing this particular employee, when we did that with them, not only did they change the systems and processes, they actually offered the employee a different seat in their organization that they felt like was better aligned with them. Now, of course, pride gets in, and the employee initially was like, well, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't want to do that job. I don't think I'm going to be good at that job. And so they pushed back on it. And, and again, in leadership, I think sometimes when people push back, we're like, I don't know what to do about that. But I just said, listen, stay firm to this and say, listen, you can move to this seat or you can leave. You decide. Well, they decided to stay and they went to the new seat, and now it's working great. That employee likes the work. They're doing a good job. And now that friction of that employee's performance and the breakdowns that were happening went away. Now, a second part of this is energy drains. What is currently draining your energy at work? This could be people. This could be things that you're doing. This could be processes that you're engaging in that you don't really love. What are you currently doing right now that drains your energy? I do this on a quarterly basis. We have this conversation with clients of what are you doing right now that's draining your energy? And there's always things on the list that drain their energy. So what are the things? This is a great opportunity for you to get rid of those things. Like one of the things I used to do for a long time is I recorded my coaching calls. Now, the funny thing is the genesis of doing this was early on in the coaching business's lifespan. We partnered with a company that aggressively sold coaching products, and we happened to be kind of part of an offering that they offered. Now, because of how they sold the products, first of all, I never knew the clients before they got put on my calendar. I never met them, never talked to them, never vetted them. So I'm like at the mercy of this sales team. Like, is this person even a good fit for this? I don't even know. So every once in a while, I'd get someone who would complain to the company and say, well, Brandon didn't do his call with me. Brandon missed his call. That would really bug me because I don't do that. And I've never done that, at least not intentionally. I could probably count literally over 16 years now of coaching. I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've missed a call with someone. It's been that infrequent. And so it bothered me. So to prove that I did a call, I started recording them so I could say, hey, I did this call, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't work with clientele like that. I haven't worked with clientele like that for a long time. But you know what I was doing? Till about 2 years ago, I was recording people's calls, and then I would upload them to their file, and I would hold on to them. And I just realized, like, why am I doing that? And I had an assistant that did it for a long time. I mean, it wasn't even that I specifically did it, but I had my assistant doing it. And I was just like, okay, why are we doing some of these things? Let's cut some of these things. We don't need to do them. They're not necessary. Now, if someone wants me to record a call that we do, I will do that. But I'm not doing it for every single call that I do. So there's a lot of things where we invest time and energy that don't really produce a high rate of return. There's people that we have on our team that maybe drain our energy, that don't really create a lot of value. And so, it's important to recognize that and get rid of that. And then you may have things that you do, products and services that are dogs, right? And look, when we have a dog in our business, we want to get rid of it. Now, we don't want to get rid of these dogs because they're cute and they look playful and fun. But where do you have underperforming products and services? Where do you have underperforming people? So I've got a couple of examples here that I'll share with you about this. I had a medical company in Houston that I was working with, and they have a lot of different providers that they work with. And they were feeling like, oh, we're just not as profitable as we want to be. And I said, well, have you taken a look at the individual people in your organization to see how they're performing in relation to what you pay them? And what they noticed was there was a couple of their providers that were barely breaking even. In fact, one of them was losing money being there. And so I said, hey, like, either figure out a way to coach them up and help them grow and take a next step, or it's probably time to move on for them. They're a dog in the organization. They're an underperforming asset that it's time to move on from. But when we're so busy, and this person really was busy. It's not like they slowed down. They have a waitlist business, but they're so busy. They don't take the time to think about, like, what are the things that I'm doing that are not working? What are the things that I'm doing that aren't making money? In fact, most businesses that I work with do not know their numbers at that level of specificity that they could even look at something like that and determine, oh yeah, this person is underperforming, or this person is costing me a lot more than the value that they're providing. And so that was one example. I had a second thing where I worked with, again, a PT clinic in the Midwest. They had 2 locations and they were barely breaking even financially. And one of the things was they were so busy that one of the providers, which happened to be the owner, ironically, was not sending their insurance paperwork in to get reimbursed from the insurance companies. And there's a window, if you're not familiar with insurance, that you need to submit a claim to get paid. And if you miss that window, that claim is no longer valid. That insurance company will not honor your claim. And so he was missing this window frequently. And one of the things I told them, and this sounded really crazy at the time because they're like, hey, what should I do about this? And I said, why don't you see less patients? Just slow down, see less patients, stop cramming every single person into your schedule who wants to be crammed in there, and give yourself some time to do the paperwork that needs to be done around your care. And they did that. Initially, they were like, I don't know about this. And I said, look, you're already losing money, so you might as well give it a try. Within 3 months, they were back in the black in a pretty significant way. And they realized that they just needed to slow down, cut some things out that they were doing, some ways that they were doing things to be more efficient, right? And I think in a lot of ways, when we get into scarcity, one of the problems with that is the mindset becomes, well, more is more. But more isn't always more. So when we're in scarcity, we think, well, I got to do more appointments. I got to do more of this. I got to do more of that. I got to work longer hours. It's not necessarily the case. In fact, that's a great way to burn out. And that's a great way to do a lot of work that you're not really effective with because you're just burned out and you're tired. So a lot of times when we talk about trimming the fat, we're creating efficiency. We're eliminating things that are dragging your business down anyway. And I do a lot of work with clients on identifying areas where they're doing things that they just shouldn't do. I mean, I don't know how many times I've asked a client, like, why are you doing that? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, what if you stop doing it? And they're like, I'd never really even considered that. And so that's an opportunity for you to think about, again, during that trim the fat, pillar, what can I do to cut and be more efficient in what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, and this kind of goes into efficiency a little bit, but it's optimizing your delivery. It's creating systems. It's utilizing technology and all those kinds of things into your business in a really powerful way. What I notice about a lot of businesses is they have technology in their current technology stack that they don't use or that they don't know how to use, and it's underutilized. That could be a CRM. That could be some kind of patient management system. They have all this technology that they're just not really familiar with that can create a lot of streamlined processes and ways of doing things that they're just not really even utilizing or they're scratching the surface with. And so, what aspects of, your current service delivery are time consuming, repetitive? Where can you streamline what you're doing? And so systems and technology are the big piece of this. Where can you utilize these to enhance the delivery of your service? I work with a lot of successful businesses that don't have systems at all. And look, not having systems in the early stages of a business. So right now, if you're watching this right now and you're a startup, like, I don't want you to sweat it. Like, systems, they'll come and you should build them at some point, but it's not as important as proving that your business is viable and it's going to make it, right? So all roads lead to sales early on. I'm not going to sit here and polish all the systems for delivery and all this stuff if I haven't even proved the concept is viable. But once you get to a place where you start to really create some some consistency, you've got to systematize. But what happens is a lot of businesses just stop. They don't do it because they don't think they need to. At some point, your business is going to get to a point where you recognize that I absolutely have to systematize what I'm doing because it's too big to do things the way that I've been doing it. So up to a certain level, you can get away with not systematizing. But after that, you're going to get to a point where it's so painfully obvious that you need to systematize that it creates a lot of stress and a lot of chaos because you haven't taken the time to do it. And, in this process, right, like I've got to fight, like in going through this technology process, I've got to fight maybe some of the things that happen around technology where it's like, oh, I'm scared to use new technology, or I'm not very tech savvy, all those kinds of things. But, here's one of the things that I'll mention as I talk about this. I spent the time last summer with a client. So one of the things that I'll do with a client, if they want to, is we can spend a whole day together. I'll fly to them. They can fly to me. We'll spend a day, maybe 2 days, and just really go over everything that they're doing and just kind of go through, where do we think the low-hanging fruit is? Now, there were a couple of things that were really interesting with this particular client that I talked to last time. One of the things was how they use data and how they compile data and how they could use technology better to get a better picture of what's working and what's not from a sales standpoint. But one of the things that they brought from that conversation was they decided to implement a new referral tool that they had heard about at a conference, and thought was really interesting, but they just hadn't implemented it. And so they started implementing this, and now they're like, oh my gosh, our lead cost has gone down tremendously because now we have this referral app that sends us referrals that cost us next to nothing to get. So they put that piece of software into what they're doing, created a whole different thing. The other thing they decided to do is they had this old grandfathered system. And here's the thing. I tend to be a person that's very loyal to people, and I hate to change agreements. So like I have clients that I've worked with, I'm not kidding you, for probably 12 years straight. And they're on like whatever it cost to work with me 12 years ago. I've never changed it. I'm probably never going to change it. But there are times where sometimes we have to change a system because it just doesn't make sense to keep it the way it is. And so this same client that introduced the referral software realized that they had a way of compensating people that was very outdated. And they were great. They kept this grandfathered plan for 3 people. One of them, the person didn't even like. They didn't even like this person, but they kept him grandfathered into this old program. And so we use that as an opportunity to create a completely different system and shift those people over to this new system that was easier to manage, that was more scalable, and wasn't going to give them a reduced amount of compensation, but it was going to change the way they were compensated in certain ways. And so they went out and did that. And ironically, we get so much anxiety about making change with people that way, and we hesitate to do it. But when they presented that to those team members, the team members were like, man, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We should totally do that. And I'm on board. Let's go ahead and make that happen. Right. And so, in thinking about that, right, what could the thoughtful integration of systems or technology, where could that enhance your client experience and your own efficiency? Where might that happen, right? Where could you be more thoughtful about the systems, the technology that you're utilizing right now to enhance the value of the experience that your clients are having right now? What might that look like for you? So as we wrap up today, some final thoughts on this particular masterclass. The thing that we have to overcome, and the thing that uncertainty allows us to do is it allows us to overcome routine and complacency. And look, I don't care how disciplined you are, how good of a producer that you are. All of us get into places where we get into the routine and we get complacent. And the reason for that is, as a coach, our brain functions better in routine. Our brain likes routine. Hey, like, keep doing things the same way. Now, the kicker to that is, even when there are things that are not that great and that you don't love, your brain still prefers to do that because it knows it. It knows how to deal with it. It's already created the workarounds to make that work. It's already MacGyvered whatever system that needs to be MacGyvered to make this work for you. It has conspired to help you stay in the place that you are. Sometimes catalyzing events and times where things are a little bit uncertain force us out of a routine, which is good, and forces us to really evaluate some things and decide what we can do differently. So that's what I want you to think about. Think about your service. Think about where you can enhance the service. Where can it be better? What's the next level of what you can do? The second thing is trim the fat. Where is there waste? Where's there inefficiencies? Where can things be streamlined? And then the last thing to support the first two, where can you create systems and utilize technology to help streamline what you're doing to create more value for what you're doing? Years ago, I implemented a tool called Coach Accountable into my coaching practice. An absolute game changer. Clients can schedule appointments without talking to me. They can do that after hours. They can look at their notes. They can upload files. For years, I didn't have any of those things. But when I got that interface and I paid for that and set that up for myself, it was a complete game changer for my business. Not only allowed me to be more efficient, but it also gave a customer service tool for my clients that I simply didn't have when I first started working with them. So there's a lot of ways that technology can create efficiency and really create a better experience for the people that we serve in this process. So a couple of things that I want to mention as we wrap up here. And there's a couple things here. The first one is this. I have a workshop coming up called Systems for Success. It's here in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I know I've got people watching from all over. So I get it. Like, some people are like, I don't know if I want to come to Salt Lake, but June 19th and 20th, we are doing an event here in Salt Lake called Systems for Success. It's a day-and-a-half event, and it's all about eliminating business friction. And we're going to look at two different systems in this process. We're going to break these down. Your process for delivering your experience, and we're going to go through that and really fine-tune it and iron it out. And the system that you use to manage your team and to create great cultures in your organization. So when we talk about experience, a lot of times experience tends to be outward facing. We talk about the customer. But to me, the internal experience is the caretaker of the external. The internal culture is the caretaker of the external experience. So when we treat people right inside and we do them right, they do our clients and our customers right as a result of that. So we're going to spend a day and a half really unpacking that. We're going to spend a half day on Thursday in the afternoon, a full day on Friday, and really go through this. So if you want to register for this and you want to show up, and for those of you who are in Utah, I would highly recommend coming. I know you're going to love it. I know it so much that I guarantee your investment. So if you came and you didn't love it, I give you your money back. I'll tell you this, 16 years I've been doing these workshops. I've never written someone a check. I'm going to knock on wood. There's a first time for everything, but that's how confident I am that you'll get a ton of value, like 5 figures, 6 figures worth of value out of that. And so use the code HAVESIES to register for half off. There's the link there. I'm also going to put this in a follow-up email as well with the recording that we're going through today. So if you want to come to that event, it's June 19th and 20th. I promise you, if you're really in this space right now, and not everyone is who's watching, I get it. But for those of you who are really in that space where you're like, hey, I've got a mature business, things are starting to go pretty well, or they're already going well, but I need to get more organized. I need to really create some more systemization, and I really need to get my team on board with this. This will be a great workshop to come to. Now, listen, if you're not in a place where you think it's not really appropriate, my business is not there yet, maybe I don't even have a business yet, and you're like, hey, don't come to this, right? Like, I get that. You don't want to come. The Breakthrough Blueprint is also an option. I'll put that in the email as well. The Breakthrough Blueprint is basically a 3-call series that I do that really helps you kind of figure out where are you at, where do you want to be, what gets in your way. And again, that's a free 3-call process that I do for people who really want to get clear on really where they're at and what their next step is. That's a service that I offer as well. And so I want to mention that on the webinar. So final thought for today, I saw this quote by a guy named Matthew Fox, said, chaos is a prelude to creativity. So if there's some things going on in your business right now that's a little chaotic, in your work world that's a little chaotic, this is a great opportunity, right? The great leaders, they figure out a way to be creative. They figure out a way to rise to the occasion in this spot, and to find new ways to deliver value, to create efficiencies that could be created that are probably right there in front of you that you're missing, and to help, and it's a great time to implement new technology and different things to really help you move forward in a powerful way for the people that you serve. So if you find yourself in a tough spot right now and you're trying to figure some things out, look, I don't want you to be there forever. It's a good place to be in some ways in terms of what it can lead to and what it can help you create. But again, it does really, it can feel really scary at times, but I promise you can get through this. And again, if you need any support from me, would love to see you at the workshop. If you want to do the 3-call series as well, would love to have you on that also. You can go to New Work Revolution too. If you haven't seen the free tools suite on the website, we've got a ton of free tools over there as well to help you organize and systematize some of the things that you're doing. So I want to thank you guys for being here for this particular masterclass, Leading with Confidence. Hopefully this gave you a couple of ideas to really help you move forward confidently with what you're doing and, your next steps there. So again, thank you guys so much for being here. That's all I've got for tonight. I'm going to let you guys go. Enjoy your evening, and I hope to talk to you again soon.